Russian President Vladimir Putin is mocking President Donald Trump's peace efforts. Unfortunately, after the Alaska summit, instead of a ceasefire, we had an intensification of Russian attacks on Ukraine. And what happened over Polish skies last night is a remnant of this intensified offensive against Ukraine. Since then, we have also had a meeting of these authoritarian powers in Beijing, and we had a visit from Polish President Karol Nawrocki. So I expect President Trump will want to show Poland and all our authorities that what he said about Poland's security will be backed up by action.
Russia has attacked Poland with at least 19 drones. Poland is closer to open conflict than at any time since World War II. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump doesn't care about this. What are the main reasons behind Russia's attack on Poland, and how did Trump react to this incident? Russian drones crossed into Poland airspace overnight on September 9-10, triggering emergency air defenses, temporary airport closures, and an official protest from Warsaw. The incursion has reignited international fears of potential spillover from the ongoing war in Ukraine into alliance territory. According to Polish military sources, at least 19 Russian-made kamikaze drones breached Polish airspace late Monday night, crossing from Belarusian territory during a broader Russian attack on Ukraine. Some intel reports suggest up to 23 drones may have been involved. Polish air defenses successfully intercepted and shot down at least 8 drones, while others either returned or crashed, according to Reuters. The incursion led to the temporary suspension of operation at several major airports, including Warsaw Chopin International, Modlin, Lublin, and Rzeszów-Jasonka Airport. Damage from the drone activity appears limited throughout one residential structure in the Lublin region sustained roof damage, but without casualties. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk condemned the airspace breach in strong terms, calling it a deliberate provocation and clear violation of Polish sovereignty. Speaking to reporters, Tusk said, quote, "This is not one-off error. This is a test of our readiness and resolve." In response, Polish Foreign Minister issued a formal diplomatic protest to Moscow, demanding immediate clarification and accountability. Following the incident, Poland invoked Article 4 of NATO Treaty, which calls for emergency consultations among member states when a member feels its territorial integrity or security is under threat. Senior defense officials in Washington said the Pentagon is closely monitoring the situation and maintaining close contact with Polish counterparts. However, there is no indication that the US would deploy additional forces. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calls the drone incursion into Poland a dangerous precedent for Europe, urging NATO to respond with unified resolve. Ukrainian officials also called for the creation of European air defense systems, suggesting that drones approaching one country should be tracked and intercepted by neighboring states if necessary. Also, UK Defense Secretary John Healey on Wednesday said that he would ask the British Armed Forces to look at options to bolster NATO's air defenses over Poland.
The French. And following our discussions today, I've asked our UK Armed Forces to look at options to bolster NATO's air defence over Poland. Today, as E5 nations, we say to President Putin, your aggression only serves to strengthen the unity between our NATO nations. Your aggression only serves to strengthen our determination to stand with Ukraine. And your aggression reminds us that a secure Europe needs a strong Ukraine, and that the security of Europe starts in Ukraine. Well, first, our assessment, early assessment seems to be that it was around 20 drones that were part of the attack. Our assessment was that the NATO air defences worked effectively, and we paid tribute to the Poles, the Dutch, and other NATO personnel involved. As to whether this was intentional, the effect is the same. It's tested our NATO defences. It has breached international law and sovereign airspace. And it is, whatever the intent behind it, it's dangerous. We condemn it. It's reckless. And we will reinforce where we need to NATO's air defence.
Meanwhile, experts point out that the incident is consistent with the broader trend of Russian drone and missile overflights into NATO territories, including Romania, Moldova, and the Baltic states. However, the scale and complexity of the Polish breach, affecting multiple regions and involving simultaneous incursions, suggest a higher degree of operational planning. This is a gray zone warfare where Russia's actions fall below the threshold of conventional war but are designed to challenge adversaries in strategic terms. In this case, the incursion disrupted civilian aviation, triggered military readiness measures, and placed political pressure on NATO, according to Euronews. Also, military analysts believe that the Russian operation was designed to exploit a Soviet-era doctrine known as reflexive control, which involves manipulating an opponent's behavior throughout calibrated threats, according to the Washington Post. In this framework, the drone incursions allow Russia to study NATO's defensive posture and response times under real-world conditions, gaining critical intelligence on radar ranges, communication lags, and interception capabilities. This form of operational probing is unlikely to be random. Analysts argue that the drones were deliberately routed towards sensitive infrastructure in Poland, including regions known to host NATO logistic hubs, maximizing both intelligence yield and strategic messaging. Also, the regions affected by the drone incursion, particularly Rzeszów and Lublin, have been critical for transit of military aid, personnel, and humanitarian assistance in Ukraine. By targeting these corridors, Russia appears to be signaling its ability to disrupt NATO's operational depths without triggering a direct confrontation. This approach mirrors previous Russian tactics of exerting pressure in contested areas while avoiding definite escalations that could activate unified NATO response, according to Associated Press. Washington Post reports that by pushing into Polish airspace without clear military red lines, Russia may be attempting to expose hesitation or division within the alliance, particularly over how far NATO is willing to go to defend members under asymmetric pressure. Poland's invocation of Article 4, though not unusual, underscores growing anxiety among Eastern European members that NATO's current response mechanism may be insufficient for managing this low-level aggression. There is also a broader concern about public reaction and the risk of overreaction without full intelligence verification. Moreover, according to The Guardian, this incident is viewed by experts as a part of a deliberate campaign by the Kremlin to signal its reach and defiance under international scrutiny. By utilizing drones, cheap, unnamed, and politically deniable, Russia is able to exert psychological pressure on NATO members, introduce uncertainty into alliance, and distract from its own challenges on the front lines. There is also concern that such maneuvers aim to disrupt military aid flows and force to relocation of NATO resources towards homeland defense. Analysts agree that such incidents, if unaddressed, risk also eroding the deterrent power of NATO, particularly if adversaries conclude that ambiguous or deniable attacks will not be met with firm consequences. Following the violation of Polish airspace by way of Russian drone attacks during Moscow's large-scale assault on Ukraine, the United States has moved swiftly to reaffirm its commitments to NATO security. Through some observers note a degree of ambiguity in Trump's proposal and his response. President Trump responded to the airspace breach by posting a short message on social media expressing concerns and suggesting that the situation may represent the beginning of broader crisis. Quote, "What's with Russia's violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." However, he did not issue a formal statement outlining US policy or any immediate actions the administration planned to take. According to reports by Politico, Trump has conducted a phone call with Polish President Karol Nawrocki. Despite increased calls for clarity, Trump has far avoided outlining whether the US would advocate for further sanctions against Russia or push NATO toward a more assertive stance. His tone has been interpreted by multiple media outlets as cautious, possibly reflecting broader strategic calculations regarding direct US-Russia confrontation. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker publicly reaffirms the American commitment to defending NATO, characterizing the drone breach as a serious escalation that cannot go unanswered. The State Department has maintained ongoing communication with allies, signaling strong support for Poland's sovereignty and stating that the US stands in full solidarity with NATO's eastern members. However, no additional troops deployed by US, and also the US administration has emphasized allied coordination as a primary course of action. According to Associated Press, US officials are continuing to closely monitor Russian actions in Belarus and Ukraine to assess whether this incursion is an isolated maneuver or part of larger hybrid warfare strategy. US intel community is reportedly examining radar data and flight paths to verify Poland's claims that the drones penetrated deep into airspace. However, Republican Congressman Joe Wilson describes the drone attack as a direct attack on ally and characterized it as an act of war. He also urged President to impose sanctions at Russia's military apparatus and to increase aid to Ukraine, including weapons capable of hitting Russian targets. Senator Dick Durbin asserted that repeated violations of NATO airspace by Russia is a test for the US, a test for US resolve to protect Poland and the Baltic states. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and glory to Ukraine.